there, this is Marishka with Larry, and today we're going to be talking with our friend Nghi about a topic that we haven't talked about in a while, lease options. So why don't we have Nghi join us?
Go ahead and bring on Nghi.
Absolutely.
Hey guys.
Hi, Nghi.
Good to see ya.
Good to see you.
So it's been a while since we've seen each other in person.
Yeah.
But it's nice that we can visit virtually.
Yeah.
But we've talked about talking about this for a long time. This is a subject that I think we both are kind of fond of, and we've had many offline conversations about it, and thought we'd get together and just kind of share our thoughts and trade some ideas about it. How does that sound?
That sounds perfect.
Okay. Well, before we get started, too far, why don't you, if you don't mind, why don't you tell folks a little bit about how you got started in real estate investing and what you do now?
Well, I was I found a real estate seminar. Paid some money to them to learn real estate back then. Don't regret it because it got me where I am, but that was back in 2014, and kind of exhausted their material, went looking for more info, went to a lot of meetups locally, perused, bigger pockets, which was much smaller back then, and then got started fixing and flipping in 2014. And then didn't really think about cash flow until 2017 when I had my daughter, my first child. And then I was like, I need a long-term solution, right? Can't keep doing this side job anymore. So yeah. And so that's and now we're here.
Okay, so you did a lot of fix and flip. As I recall, you ended up quitting your job and doing it full time. And how did that go?
That lasted for about 3 months.
Oh, okay.
It just seemed long.
Well, I was very gung ho about the flipping, and then I quit my job, and then I was like, oh, I can't sell a flip. Oh, wait, but I can't get a loan either. So I then went back to the job, and I've had a job. I've always had a W-2 basically for all of my post college life, and it's helped me. It's become a backup plan, so that I can continue to if something goes wrong, I can continue to be financeable, I would say.
Well, I think that that's actually really smart. A lot of folks, do just like you did and say, hey, I want to quit my job as quickly as possible. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But as you point out, it's really hard to get financing if you don't have a job or if you haven't established a long enough track record of real estate investing so that you can show an underwriter. And then, of course, if you're self-employed, you want to write everything off. And so your income looks terrible. So it's actually kind of a smart move, I think, to have a W-2.
Yeah. Even though there's so many financing options out there, I think, the conventional loan is always the best loan that you can get for, a 30-year loan. And I think you have to learn how to play by those rules. In some ways, you don't have to, but I think, for me, I always want to have the most chances to get financing.
Yeah.
And so I think the job is just the easiest way to get financing with. Everyone knows how to underwrite W-2 income. There's actually very little underwriting you have to do for W-2 income.
Yeah, just check some boxes.
Yeah. And honestly, conventional loan is not very real estate friendly. The more properties you have, the harder it is for you to get a loan.
The harder it is. Yeah. Well, for example, a couple of years ago when we bought our primary home, we had, moved to another state and wanted to buy and we hadn't really been doing anything for a while. And so I was like, well, shoot, I'm not sure how this is going to look and everything. So we decided to do a bank statement loan. And at the time I was going, oh, dang, because our interest rate was a little above 4%. And at the time, you could get high 2s and low 3s. And well, now I'm quite happy with low 4s, but anyway.
We should probably mention too that Nghi's lovely wife, Sarah, works in the business as well too, right?
Yeah, not so much anymore. The more kids we have, the less she's in the real estate side. But yeah, no, she was a real estate agent. She was a mortgage lender. And my full-time job now is on the asset-based lending side for, getting loans for real estate investors. So we're definitely we're in the investor hat, or the financing hat all the time, and the investor hat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ellen. Sarah's
So
beautiful, and you have a lovely family too. So
you do. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's nice, I think, when your spouse or partner understands what it is that you're doing, and they're at least supportive if they're not, actually involved, hands-on. So it's nice that, you guys have that where, you can talk about it, and it's not like you're speaking a foreign language. I don't know. What do you think? Is that helpful?
No, I mean, I agree. I don't think that, spouses need to both be in the business necessarily,
Yeah.
but they need to understand the goals of real estate and why we're choosing real estate to accomplish what we want to accomplish in life, and be aligned on like what life you want to have, right? Having that common goal, that vision. So, and I still believe that real estate is the best way for the average Joe to achieve financial independence and financial freedom. Right? You don't need to come from a great wealthy background. You don't need to be the smartest person. You need some grit, I think, but I think for someone who has an entrepreneur mindset, real estate just works. And there's just so many ways. When you say real estate, there's just so many ways to invest in it. I think there's over 100 strategies depending on the market and what you want to do, right? So it's a big world out there, and you just have to go in there and grab it.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know about you, but we've certainly found over the years that, sometimes we will shift our strategy just kind of depending on what the market is doing. We might, go down one avenue for a while, and then things kind of change and the market changes and conditions change. And you go, you know what, that strategy isn't working as well as it was. Maybe we should try something else, or re-employ, some of the strategies that worked for us in the past. Have you found that to be the case as well?
What I really like is that it's like whether you really like a strategy or whether you really like a market, both works, right? You can find a market for every strategy, and you can find a strategy for every market.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because, some strategies that we were doing maybe 10 years ago in the Pacific Northwest don't work as well now. But we might be employing them in the Midwest, for example. Yeah.
Right. The West Coast, as you know, is an appreciation market. And for a while, I chased cash flow. I chased out of state because of that, right? I was choosing out of state markets for the cash flow, but now I'm actually going backwards. Now I'm kind of like, it's really stressful for me when I can't see the stuff I own. So now my strategy has pivoted to something that works more locally.
That's really interesting because, I've run into that with people. And I used to think that it was mostly folks who maybe were newer investors, but you've obviously, you've got a good amount of experience, but you're saying that you'd rather be able to drive by your real estate holdings rather than, even if you have something that has great cash flow, but it's 1,000 miles away, that doesn't appeal to you as much as having something that you can see. Is that fair?
There's multiple aspects to it. I think for me, it's I have a certain level of quality that I want to have for my properties. I'm also a control freak in some ways as well. Like I've tried not being one, and it just causes me stress. So being local helps me, I guess, control things
It's
more.
just one less thing. Yeah.
Right. But I also actually like the appreciation game now more so than the cash flow. I don't think, if you're a younger real estate investor, you don't really get rich off of cash flow. You have time to play the appreciation game if you play it right? Because honestly, the amount of cash flow you can collect over 1 or 2 years is nothing compared to how much equity and appreciation you can get if you do it right over 1 or 2 years. We saw ever since COVID how much appreciation has gone up over most markets.
Right.
And if you chose the right market, then you can make $250K on one deal in 1 or 2 years, right? You get that from cash flow.
Definitely. And, to your point that you made earlier, if you do have a W-2 job and you're not chomping at the bit to leave, well, that's going to cover your daily expenses, and so then you really are in a good position to just play the appreciation game, which is truly the one that, ultimately is going to make you, wealthy long term. But, there is something to be said as well about cash flow for somebody who maybe they don't want to be an employee any longer, and then they do need something that they're, going to be able to live off of.
Right. I think you have to ask yourself who you are, because if someone asks me like, what am I going to do when I retire at like 30, 40? And I'm kind of like, you're a workaholic, so I'm pretty sure you'll find some other things to do. I mean, I think, and that's what I tell people when they ask me, what are you going to retire? Well, retirement for me means only working 40 hours a week. Right?
There you go. Yeah.
And if I'm passionate about real estate and I'm working in real estate, it doesn't feel like working. I'm just going to do it anyway. And so for me, it's not about chasing cash flow to get out of my job necessarily. I think I want to diversify, so I'm still building that, right? But for me, it's about, well, how can I gain wealth faster? How can I give my family the life that they should deserve to live faster? And for me, that's more of an appreciation play in some ways, right?
Yeah.
Again, I'll still have both. I want to have kind of everything and diversify and just build short-term and long-term. But I don't know. I think short-term stuff, the shiny object, the lifestyle. I mean, I'm supporting my parents too. They're getting older, so I can't wait for that to accomplish my financial needs. So there's goals on both ends.
For sure. Well, and there's some strategies even within, let's just say you have, a good amount of appreciation. Well, you can always draw the money off in the form of a loan, right, and, not have tax implications, and then, take that money and use it. And if the property's rented or whatever, then those are going to cover your payments. And so there's strategies that you can use, whichever, path you end up taking. So.
And I don't want people to think that short-term appreciation play means flipping. I think looking back, some of the best things I could have done is not buy a project and just buy a nice house in a nice neighborhood, wait 1 or 2 years, and then just sell it, or 1031 exchange, or pull out a loan. Like that would have maybe so much more than flipping something in 6 months would have.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I mean, there have been a few houses, and there were reasons why we decided to sell them. But, in retrospect, I look back and go, man, those were great houses in great neighborhoods, and we probably should have just hung on to them.
Well, and getting to lease options, that's one thing, you basically have to feel comfortable with that. If I do a lease option, I need to be comfortable that the tenant buyers might be buying within a year or 18 months or 2 years or so forth.
Right.
And that's where it's like, so really we set our lease options up for about a year, sometimes 18 months or maybe a little bit longer. But many times if they can't buy within that period, we're going to be okay, because, it's like, well, we're cash flowing. And then if they can't buy within a year, then we're going to adjust the purchase price of the lease option as well too.
Mm-hmm.
We should probably take a moment, since you brought up lease options, Larry, is to just briefly explain what they are, because there might be a few people who don't know.
Right.
So should I take it?
Go for it.
Okay. So basically a lease option is it comes in a few different varieties. Some people call it a rent to own or lease purchase or what have you. We like to do lease options, which basically is a lease and an option to buy. So it's two different agreements. A lease, we all know what that is. An option to buy is just you have a legal right to purchase a property for a specific amount of money during a specific period of time. And in exchange for that, the optionee, the person who's receiving that option, they pay some form of consideration. It's usually money that may or may not apply towards the future purchase of that property. So when we have a lease option tenant, they are basically leasing the property. They put down a non-refundable option consideration. The way we structure it is we usually like them to have that consideration apply towards their future purchase. and then they have, a year or two, whatever we have determined is reasonable for them to be able to exercise that option, which basically means they're going to take it out with their own financing and then purchase the house. Does that everybody agree with that?
Yep, that sounds
Okay.
good. Yeah. That's why I was saying that basically when the thing that I really like, that we really like about lease options is that basically you get a higher quality of tenant that's living in the house. Our goal is that 100% of the people that move into any of our lease option houses, they're planning on buying the house. But, as we know, things sometimes change, or say maybe, there might be a divorce or something where they lose a job, or maybe they just decide, well, maybe this house isn't just right for me and so forth, or they decide, well, they really do like just being renters. But the bottom line is when people are moving into those houses, they are taking care of it. They really, they are a higher quality of tenant, and that's why we call them tenant buyers.
But what do we do if they do move out? I mean, that seems terrible.
We do it again.
I guess to your point, Nghi, if you've got a good house in a good appreciating neighborhood, it's not the worst thing in the world, is it?
No. I mean, a lot of times people, I sometimes even wish the longer you hold a lease option, the more you see the appreciation. You're like, the more you think yourself, oh, I hope they don't buy it, right? I feel bad saying that, but it's true. Everything I've seen, that again, we all know the longer you hold real estate, the more equity you have. And now I'm just thinking like, oh no, man, I wish I didn't put that out there. I wish I kept that somehow. All that was mine, right? But at the end of the day, it's a win-win situation for you and the tenant buyer in all cases. I mean, whether they execute and close or whether they don't, it's a win.
Yeah. I mean, we've had situations where people have moved out, and we do a pretty good job, I think, of screening folks to make sure that they have the capacity to buy at a future point, and that they really do want to be homeowners. And so usually, there are of course exceptions, but we've had people apologize to us and say, gosh, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to be able to buy this house. I feel bad that I'm not holding up my end of the bargain. And we're like, well, best of luck to you. It's actually okay. But on the other hand, if they are able to buy, I mean, we're thrilled for them. And we've become, good friends actually with a number of folks who have ended up, buying properties from us through the lease option method. So, but how'd you end up getting involved with lease options?
Well, it all goes back to flipping. I mean, for us, it was, sometimes flips don't go well, and you can't sell at the price where you need to break even. And for us, we're not going to lose money. We know we hold something long enough, we won't lose money, right? And at the same time, flippers, you're not an experienced landlord for the most part, right? Your business is flipping, so we didn't want to have to manage the tenant. And for us, I think the biggest fear is that when you flip something, you're putting something out there that's better than rental quality. Yeah. And you're afraid that if you put the wrong tenant there, especially in Seattle, when you can't get them out, they're going to ruin everything you did, and you're going to spend more money fixing it up later on when you want to sell. Yeah. So I think lease options kind of brought in all the benefits without all the downsides, and protected the downsides for us. I mean, we were able to get the price that we wanted, that we couldn't get on the market, right? We were able to minimize our costs, and have someone in there that takes care of the property. And when I say minimize costs, you're minimizing, extra selling costs, right? Because you're not having real estate agent and paying out 6%, right? You're also minimizing your taxes, because when you guys sell flip, you're taxed at the highest tax bracket, short-term capital gains.
Flippers don't think about that when they're first getting into it, though, do they?
You save a lot more money selling something that was once a rental, or that you've held for over a year, over a flip. So to me, it's kind of like you're able to charge, not charge, but set a higher sale price. You're able to reduce, save on taxes. You're able to put something in there that someone that will take care of your property, maybe even improve it, right? I mean, most of the tenant buyers I've had so far have added value to the property because it was their home. It's not a rental. Yeah. So it's just a win in all aspects. And for me, it's just I don't want to have to manage tenants. That's not what I'm good at.
Yeah.
But I want to put up a good property out there, and I don't want to help people own homes, right? And not be
Mhm.
stuck being a renter all the time.
Exactly. That's a really good point about, not wanting to manage tenants, because when you have the lease options set up properly, they kind of self-manage, don't they?
Right? You don't have to pay a property
Yeah.
manager. I don't feel like I need to do an inspection on the property at all. I'm okay not seeing properties for years, even though it's being rented out, on lease.
Yeah. 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 We usually will set up, if it's a property that we're working with, we usually like to inspect initially, until we kind of get a feel for them and feel comfortable that, okay, they're actually really taking care of things. But yeah, we've had some interesting calls over the years where, like, I remember a voicemail we had one time. I was like, well, I'm calling because I just wanted to let you know we're changing out the faucet. I never liked that kitchen faucet, and I don't even know why I'm really telling you this, but we're putting in a nice new one, or we're changing out the appliances, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, they want to make it their own because they're planning to buy it, and ultimately, if it makes them happier, they're going to be a happier tenant. They're hopefully improving the property, and in most cases they are. And so, now your investment is being well tended, and if they can raise the value of it, in addition to just regular market appreciation, they're going to have a better situation when it gets time for them to actually purchase. So,
Well, they're kind of like a homeowner in training.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I wanted to chat with you about that because I see the market shifting, and, I don't know, you in your position, working with a lot of investors, do you think that it's a good time for people to be doing lease options?
At the risk of hiding something that I, it's, when you find something really good, you don't want to share it with the world, right?
Oh,
Sometimes.
yeah. Okay. Good point.
One of the reasons I love lease options is it's such a unique niche. I don't hear people talking about it
Yeah.
as a common real estate strategy, and that's what I love about it. You go out there, you do something everyone else is doing, flipping, wholesaling, even building, even daddies and ADUs now in Seattle. Like that's so much more common these days than
Oh, yeah.
lease
I see
options.
it all the time.
And for me, it's I like to be doing strategies where I don't have to compete, because competing just raises the prices for everyone. It kind of kills that strategy. It's hard to find good deals. But I also think this strategy just simply works. I mean, I'm so far primarily used to it being a backup strategy, right? When something goes wrong. But what if you had set something like this up from the beginning, where you buy something for the purpose of lease option? I think you can do so much more with it. Right now, there is, in this market right now, people can't buy houses. I mean, there's demand for it, but just people can't afford it, right?
Yeah.
DTI, where the interest rates are now, it just makes homes really unaffordable, especially here in Seattle, the Seattle area. So lease options is a way to bring people back into home ownership. It meets a need. So there's actually higher demand for it right now than there ever was before because of that.
I think
Because
so.
again, the amount of people out there who wants to own a home is still there. They just can't qualify for it.
Yeah. So I just want to back up for a minute. You used an acronym, and it's okay among us, but in case there are people who might be watching this, what does DTI stand for again?
Sorry. Debt to income. It is primarily how conventional lenders underwrite and see if you qualify for a loan, right? It just means your total debt's divided by your total income, and usually you have to meet somewhere between like a 40 to 50%, 55% ratio, depending on what loan products you use.
Right. Right.
And if the higher the interest rates are, the higher the mortgage payment is, so the harder it is to qualify for.
Yeah. Yeah. So if somebody could lease option for a period of time, and maybe they're, expecting to get some promotions, or they're, they started a side gig, but they haven't been working at it long enough for that income to be counted. This could be a way for them to, kind of get into the house that they'd ultimately like to buy, but they're just going to rent it for a period of time until they're actually able to buy. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, they can rent it. They can slowly pay down the price of the
Yeah.
property, that, the purchase price. They can kind of wait out the interest rate to see, let's say someone structured, I think interest rates will be low in the next year or two. Well, we can structure a lease option so that, when the interest rate hits what you need, your strike rate or your strike point, you can execute and buy at that time on a price that we've already talked about.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you kind of set your goals. And this is why I love lease options. It's very flexible. You have
Yeah.
two sides coming in. You say, this is my goal, this is my goal, and we can always find some kind of middle ground.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing I love about it too. I'm glad you said that, because I've always, when Larry and I do these, we our goal is always to, we want to make it a win-win. And sometimes people say, well, you can't, not everybody can win. There have to be winners and losers. That, the way we look at it is, no, you really can structure something where everybody wins.
Well, and if you're not the big bank, we're the mom and pop, and we're selling to the mom and pops. So we can be real flexible. It's like, so I remember, this is years ago when we did a house in Federal Way in Twin Lakes, and the house is basically, well, we won't go into all the details about it, but when we were standing in the driveway of this house after we decided that we can make this deal work for this younger couple, it was basically big burly guy. He's like in a point of tears. He goes, "You don't know how much this means to me and my family," And you remember those moments. It's like, well, it's just like, well, we do that not so much that we can get rich by money, but we want to get wealthy by a lifestyle, and we want to live the dream, And when you can help people in every respect, it feels really good, So.
No, home ownership is a real dream. It's life changing. To be a part of that, I think it's amazing, especially in a place like, expensive place like Seattle, and in every market, but especially in a place like Seattle, I feel like, I think it's definitely life changing.
Yeah. I think really in any market, it makes a lot of sense, and it definitely can make a lot of sense. But yeah, a lot of the West Coast markets, in particular, a few years ago when we moved to Idaho, North Idaho wasn't necessarily high priced, but boy, we're trying to stay right with Seattle there. Prices keep going up and up. So
let me ask you a question, Nghi. With your experience with lending and so forth, self-employed people, do you feel that they're a good risk or a bad risk?
I think, the answer is always depends, right? When you sit there self-employed, is their business doing well at the end of the day? But I think for us, you can look at the person or you look at the asset. And for us, there's different ways to underwrite and qualify things. To me, if you look at an asset and it kind of feeds itself, right, then you don't need to look at the person as much.
Yeah.
So it really depends. And I think the lease option really helps with that, because you can structure the asset to sustain itself. Even in a market that doesn't tend to normally cash flow, you can still make it work and make it financeable if you set up the lease option correctly.
Yeah.
So if I came to you as a brand new business and I'm self-employed, and let's say my credit score is okay, but not great, but I'm a brand new business, how would you say that a lease option might work out for me then?
Well, I would say, if you're a brand new business, you're not going to be able to get a conventional loan for sure, right? Because if you're self-employed, they want stable income for the past 2 years, which you can't show. Bank statement loans aren't there either, because again, they want to see a business that's operating for 2 years and bringing in consistent income. So then you would choose a loan program that just looks at the asset and says, okay, well, here is what this asset's going to cost in terms of monthly payments, and then here's what the lease says in terms of what the rent is coming in. So if that kind of sustains itself, then we can do what we call a DSCR loan, which stands for debt service coverage ratio, which means how much of the debt is serviced by the income, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's solely based on the property. The borrower doesn't even need to be employed at all. They can be unemployed. You have full-time employment and self-employment, but you can be unemployed and still get this type of loan.
Mm-hmm.
Does everybody know that? I'd love to talk to you sometime just about loans in general. There's so many fun products out there that I think people don't know about.
Yeah, I think it's I wanted to create like a flow chart saying, all right, well, if you want a long-term loan, what kind of income will work for you? Property income, business income, W-2 income. I think there's another loan called asset depletion, where no income from anywhere, property's not bringing any income, but if you have a high balance in your 401k, stock accounts, bank accounts, you can still build. And I think that's, people just don't know what's out there.
Exactly. And they have a tendency, I think, to, well, I went to my bank and they said it couldn't be done. It's like, I always tell people, well, go to another bank, or better yet, go to a broker who maybe has access to, more than 3 programs, and, see what's available there. So
I would say, are you going to a bank or a lender that investors use, right? Because most lenders are not investor minded or investor focused. Most loan programs these days are made for homeowners and primary residences. So just make sure that if you're going to a bank, you might recognize the big bank name because it's a big name. It's a Wells Fargo or Chase. But Wells Fargo and Chase does not primarily serve real estate investors, right? They primarily serve homeowners.
They definitely want to check the boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so if you were, now Larry, you were kind of asking from the standpoint of if you were going to lease option a property as a tenant, right? But, and so in that instance, you'd probably want to talk to somebody who's a financing for homeowners. But if you're looking to acquire a property and then turn it into a lease option, then you want to make sure you're looking at banks or lenders who cater to investors.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny. I actually thought about buying a lease option as a homeowner. And, at that time when I was thinking, all right, well, if I want to actually quit my job, how do I get the next house that I want to live in?
Yeah.
So I actually started looking for lease options to buy. To me, it's kind of like your goal. I mean, no one plans to not make any money, right? You might need some time to season the money you're making as a self-employed entrepreneur. And at that point you can get a loan, right? And so lease options just gives you more time. There's also a chance that you can do kind of like a lease option seller financing type of situation where that seller can just for you.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to deal
with. Or
you
prove yourself, you've been making payments, religiously for a year or two and, not causing problems or what have you, that property owner might say, hey, I'm okay with extending financing to you. And that also can be a win-win, on both sides. So, we have very good credit. But on a couple of occasions, we've actually lived in houses that we were lease optioning. And one of them was in a beautiful area, but we just decided that it was so remote that it just probably wasn't a good fit for us at that time. Maybe in 10 years, it might be okay. But at that time, it wasn't quite right for us.
It was kind of an experiment because we've lease optioned our own houses. We've lease optioned other houses for people. And we just thought, well, let's go and give this a try. And we were kind of not sure if we wanted to live in that spot anyway, but But
it was a beautiful house in a beautiful area, but it was just very remote.
Well, and then that goes to show, again, it truly is a win-win because we're okay, on either side of it.
Yeah. Well, and truly the builder who had asked us, well, why don't you guys do it? Because we'd actually helped him set up a number of lease options, and he had this other house, and he goes, well, why don't you guys move in? And we're like, well, I don't know. But the reality was it worked out really well for him because we did like every other prospective, tenant buyer does. And we put in landscaping and we put in new blinds. It was a new build house. So it was, in perfect condition, but, we did those things that homeowners do to make it more of our own. And when we decided that it wasn't a good fit for us, the house was perfect. He put it on the market. It sold in a week, so it wasn't a big deal. And he got rent from us and an option consideration. So, it definitely was a win-win.
And you don't have to worry about muting your mic. We're a family here. We love your kids.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you can hear my kids in the background. They're having a good time.
Yeah, it's all good.
I was going to say, I definitely encourage every single flipper to try the pretty house business instead of the ugly house business and see how relaxing and less stressful it can be.
Wow.
Well, they take ugly houses and they make them pretty.
Yeah, but they have to go through an ugly process to get there. Yeah, I mean, this is what I decided for my strategy is that I'm just not going to deal with projects anymore, right? And just focus on pretty houses, and that's what Lease Option allows me to do.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. I mean, even today, Larry and I looked at a house, and it was a nice house in a nice neighborhood, but there were still a few things because of what we were looking for specifically for a little pet project of ours, where we, it's like, well, we'd have to do this and we'd have to do this and we'd have to, nope, it needs to be turnkey. Once upon a time, Larry used to enjoy putting in baseboards and getting his hands dirty a little bit, but he confessed to me last week that he thinks he's beyond that now.
I can't get down on my knees as much and work on the floor.
But yeah, the pretty house business. I mean, I like how you put that. It's there's definitely something to be said about that. And are there people out there who have pretty houses that aren't selling? Why don't they just list them with realtors?
Right. Well, I mean, it's usually a price issue, and maybe they have to get that price for some reason. Yeah. And then there's that flexible conversation you can have and saying, well, we can still give you the price, but let's talk about the terms.
Yeah.
And again, this is where I love the flexibility of Lease Options. And this was our problem back then too. We had a price we were pretty set with, saying like, well, we don't sell this price, we're losing money, and we're not losing money.
Yeah.
So that's how we got introduced to Lease Options, and it works. And now, that first house where we couldn't sell at the price we wanted, well, we first started a 3-year lease option. In year 2, the tenant asked to extend it, and now we have a 10-year lease option with the tenant. And again, it's a win-win situation for everyone. And now I kind of wish, the longer he holds it, the actually more money we're able to recoup from this.
Yeah.
How we structured it, right? And it's a win for him because it's going to take him a while to be able to clear his financials to be able to get financing again.
Sure. Well, and and in the meantime, he's being able to enjoy the house like it's his own, and we have a friend who actually he sets up his lease options just as 10-year lease options. What do you think of that?
That's pretty cool. I am not there yet in terms of.
I haven't done it either.
Being able to predict what the market looks like in 10 years.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely open to it. I mean, I think I'm more open to it once I have kind of gone in bed with the tenant buyer and, kind of experienced, okay, this is what this relationship looks like. Yeah, right. I can do this in 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm a little skeptical of doing that up front with someone I've never, met.
I agree.
Good point.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you want to limit your exposure, to a year or two, see how things go. But if it does end up being a good relationship and they're taking care of the house and they're making their monthly payments and you're not stressed about anything, why not extend, I think
for that matter, converting a lease option to a seller finance. We've got a house in Michigan that they've only lived in there for what, 3-4 months now.
About 6 now. Yeah.
Great people. I'm fine with converting it to seller financing. We'll still get cash flow, and actually their monthly payment is going to go down. They'll be responsible for the taxes, insurance, and all that. But it's just one way to make it a win-win for everybody and make them homeowners sooner. Because I think our lease option with them is 18 months or something like that. Well,
it's a 2-year, but Yeah.
So you're okay. So I'm fine with converting it now because, it's like, well, then I don't have to worry about about this house in Michigan that, you just be the bank. So, yeah.
Right.
And that's what I love. I mean, people say rentals is a passive investment role. And for me, I haven't experienced that. I've chased the cash flow. I've been, a lot of things out of state. I've handed things off to property managers. It has not been a passive endeavor at all because, you still have to manage and look at the property. You have to manage property managers. Lease options is the only thing I've seen, and seller financing, where it can be truly passive.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Because you're not dealing with a tenant, with a renter, right? You're dealing with someone who has a home owner mindset, and they want to take care of the property because it's their home.
Yeah, I agree. And, and I think as well, property managers come in all different flavors, too. And there are some who are really good and there are some who are not as good. And it's hard to give up, 8, 10, 12% of the monthly rent for a property management fee if you feel like their delivery is, subpar.
Right.
So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we love lease options. That's actually kind of how we cut our teeth really in real estate. Well, our very first house, I guess, was a former primary residence that we converted to a rental, but then ultimately we turned that into a lease option as well after we'd done a few other ones. But yeah, we really like them. We kind of had stepped away from them for a few years just because, market changes and life changes and, different things like that. But yeah, we're getting back into them again. And we thought it'd be interesting to, just have a chat with you because, we've known you for a long time and, have known about some of your experiences with lease options and you're just a smart guy who knows a lot about finance. And so I think getting a perspective from somebody who's done a few things and who's seen a few things, is valuable. Let me ask you, I mean, are you finding right now, like in the flipping world, for example, what's happening there? Are people able to, complete their flips and turn around and sell them to retail buyers as planned? Is anybody struggling with that at all? Or
no, most people. I can't say most people. It depends on when you bought it, right? Because I would say right now is probably the worst time for most folks, because as you know, a year ago was the peak of the market.
Yeah.
Right. And now is when all their loans are expiring from that peak of market. And so if a lot of them have been able to sell, I mean, ARVs have gone after repair values, right? Because when a flipper buys a property, they try to envision that future value and they try to achieve that future value. And for the most part, over the last few years, it's been a pleasant surprise for all of them because the market's gone up. But when the market goes down, our equity is gone, and now they're just trying to. Some of them are even just trying to sell and still have to bring in money to close because there's not enough equity, right?
Wow.
From the loan. So I think the nice part is that I think the market's picking up a lot again.
I think it is
in a lot of markets. But flippers are just we've seen a lot of flippers get out of the game over the past few months because because they didn't understand the market. None of us. I mean, I'm not saying anyone does, but they just couldn't predict the market because you're trying to predict the future value, and what we've seen in the past year has been unprecedented. We don't know. I still don't know what value will look like in 3 months and 6 months.
Right.
Right. So how can a flipper that's basing everything on that future value be able to be successful?
So do you think that something like a lease option would be valuable for someone who is in that type of predicament where their after repair value didn't end up being quite where they needed it to be? Would this be a way for them to work through it? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I do, because I do think values are going to go back up. For one, I think we're at a low or some kind of inflection point right now. One is because it has dropped a lot. Number two, I think interest rates will drop in the next 1 or 2 years. Again, personal opinion.
Yeah. I'm not going to hold you to that.
You got a crystal ball, right?
But I think that, again, people hold out long enough, they're able to get the value they need. If they're able to hold out enough, and to them, holding out means be able to sustain their property and getting it, not letting it continue to bleed cash.
Mhm.
But the second part is they're probably on hard money, which is even harder. They need to be able to get out of it. And again, you can't refinance into some kind of stable loan until you can show that the property is bringing in some kind of income.
Ah,
Yeah, kind of a catch-22 situation, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, not always, but that's the easiest way to get that stable loan.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
right now, if you do any other kind of loan based on your income, well, as a flipper, I think you've been losing, you've been making less money over the past year. I think for sure every flipper has. So qualifying for those conventional or bank statement loans will be a little bit harder because your income would have looked differently over the past 12 months.
Yeah. Yeah. So what about, I mean, is Burr in kind of the same category, the buy, renovate, refinance?
Buy, rehab,
I can't remember what it all stands for. But
Basically, the fix and hold strategy, right? I think anyone.
Okay, that's a better one.
I think any strategy where you are depending on an accurate prediction of a future value is in trouble, right? And that's fixing, that's burring. I think right now the solution to burr is buy really well, really, really well, more than you've ever bought before to give more equity. But it's still possible. I don't think people are getting as much equity out, getting the cash out as much as they want to. But at the end of the day, it's like if you have some kind of long-term mindset, if you make sure you're financeable, if you talk to some kind of lending advisor before you buy that property, and just right. So start with the end in mind always.
Yes.
I think again, Burr works. It works a little bit less than before, but I still think it works in a lot of different places, and it's still a good strategy, even if you don't achieve the cash out. At the end of the day, you're buying something with equity in it, which is great.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so what if you were? This is really interesting. There's other types of investors as well. I mean, there's the folks who who want to fix and flip, and then there's the folks who want to fix and hold.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are, I don't want to call them the lazy investors. They're just the ones who just want to be really, really, really passive. I mean, would it be possible to just buy a property and lease option it and just not have to deal with tenant mentality? Is that a possibility at all?
That's the world I want to live in.
Oh.
No, it's true. It's just especially in a market like Seattle, right? Or any market where it's just heavily unfavorable to landlords.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of those problems arise because the landlord and the tenants that clash, or you have a malicious tenant. You don't really have those issues with lease options. Again, they're not tenants, right? They're homeowners, so they will take care of your property. They'll do whatever it takes to follow rules, so they don't lose their options. I think it's just, this is why for me it's like I don't see many. I would never want to own a property in Seattle as a rental unless it's on a lease option, because I'm just afraid of the laws here. It's crazy. It's very anti.
Yeah.
So
you really don't have a leg to stand on. I mean, just because you own a property that's worth, $500,000 or $1 million or whatever, it doesn't mean that you have any rights to it.
And the payments are painful.
Yeah.
Right? Every month you have to hold it for yourself without having someone in there. It's just painful. And for me, it's unless I know for sure there's some kind of stable cash flow or a lot of equity where I could just sell it, I don't even want to hold two properties in a market like this, because if both go vacant somehow, or economic vacancy where there's tenant in there, but they're not actually paying, right?
Economic vacancy. That's a good word.
And I just think, like, how do you even, that you just causes you to get in trouble. Because I mean, right now, if you hold two properties in Seattle, that's potentially $8,000 to $10,000 a month.
Easily.
Right? Yeah. And if you have two bad tenants or one bad tenant or a vacant property, that's hard.
Painful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really painful. Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Well, this has been fun.
Yeah.
I so appreciate you, coming on and chatting with us and sharing your insights. Do you have any other thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
No, I mean, lease options are my favorite strategy. I learned lease options from you guys. Basically, it all started where I currently live now in Federal Way, right? Back then, when you were at the library and just telling people this secret of lease options.
Back at our meetup back then, yeah.
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 So I think lease options I think it fits in any strategy really. You can make it work for any strategy. We haven't really talked about buying things on lease option. I think an investor would be really, really enamored by that. Imagine having to buy a house, ugly house or pretty house, without having to put hard money on there. Right?
Imagine that.
Oh, we do that.
So I mean,
should we take a minute and talk about that strategy?
Yeah, I haven't done it myself, but that's probably the next level for me.
Yeah. Well, I think that if there's going to always be people out there who who need to sell or don't want to hold their rental any longer. They're just tired. And there's a lot of chatter out there about, different ways to acquire properties and, seller financing and sub-2. And all of those are valid strategies that we like, but they're not always appropriate for every property owner or would-be seller. They're not always going to just give you the deed to their property right away, right? Mm-hmm. They might want to make sure that you're legit and that you're actually going to make your payments. Right. And so we've actually had, some pretty good success with, helping folks who were tired landlords or who were accidental landlords. We got started with lease options in the last housing crisis back after the 2008 crisis. And we had, our first one that we did was with a guy who was flipping a lot of properties, and he suddenly had 20 some odd properties that had no equity. And, to his credit, he sold whatever he could and took a loss on some of them. But, the ones where the loss was just going to be too deep, he loaded them up with tenants. And God bless him, he was a terrible landlord, just had no business or inclination in being a landlord. But he just needed to have something cover those monthly payments. And
he's got some great stories to tell.
This isn't the forum for those, but yeah, we do have some good stories. But he reached out because, we were talking about, lease options, and he was looking for some creative strategies. And so we basically, did what we offered for our tenants, and we leased them with an option to buy. However, we also had some, language in there that gave us the right to sublease and sell and what have you. And we were very forthright about what we were doing and everything. And he loved the idea. And he says, well, if this first one works, I've got a bunch more. And we ended up doing about, I don't know, eight deals with him or something like that. He still calls us. He's still got a couple of properties. He's like, I'd like to get your advice on this, but that's how we kind of got started with it. And it worked really well because, we didn't have to come in with a big down payment. We were able to just work something out that made sense for him and made sense for us. And then we, did it with a number of other folks as well. And just kind of straddling that lease option and doing a sandwich lease option or an arbitrage lease option where, you're kind of, you've got your option fee on this side, and then you've got your one over here that you're receiving. And then you've got your rent that you're paying over here, and you've got your rent that you're paying over here that you're receiving. And you've got your sales price over here, and then you've got the one that you're going to be, selling to your ultimate tenant buyer. So it seems like there's a lot of moving parts, but it's actually a beautiful strategy. We love it.
You made the comment about, kind of being protective of lease options and not sharing it too much. I'm fine with sharing it as long as people know how to do them right and
Yeah.
do them fair. If they're doing them just to basically, cheat out the tenant buyer or cheat out a homeowner or something or somewhere cheat the system, that's where I get really concerned, because there are a lot of people out there that do them that way, and it's really a shame because then it gives people like us a bad name, So
Yeah.
but
No, it's very true. And that's all part of the reason why I also don't want to publicly blast out there. I know there's a lot of greed in real estate, right? And I mean, as much as this can be a win-win solution for the people, I think you can also really screw over someone.
You totally can.
You do this wrong. So
yeah. And that's such a good point because, whether somebody does it intentionally, just because, hey, I'm going to make a buck, or they do it unintentionally, they just got in over their head. The bottom line is when you enter into an agreement like this, it should become paramount that is your focus. That is what you're going to take care of. And if that means that you miss a car payment or you don't eat, well, then that's what you need to do. You need to figure it out. If you say you're going to be taking over somebody's payment, you need to take over somebody's payment and take responsibility for it. That's the way I feel about it anyway. So anyway, my soapbox.
We're out of time here. Nghi, you and your family are welcome to come over visit anytime. We'd love to see you guys, and we've got a guest bedroom here in North Idaho where it's God's country here. We love it here, and gosh, thanks so much for joining us tonight, and
we really appreciate you, and it's good to know that there's folks out there that are like you who do the right thing and who are thoughtful in how they approach investing. So we appreciate you.
I think you guys give me, I think I mentioned before, but real estate is a very greedy game, and I'm glad to meet real, honest people who are just out there paving the way for a better world and how things should be run, and how things should be done as well in the real estate industry. So I appreciate meeting you guys in Federal Way so many years ago. Again,
it wasn't that long ago. I'm still young,
Of course, you weren't married yet, and now you are on child number 3. So maybe it was a few years ago.
A lot of things have changed, and this is why I want a less stressful life, and Lease Options are the way to go for that. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate it. And go forth and do good things.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Nghi.